we actually think that those who are investing in the power of data to build businesses and to disrupt sectors actually have some clear benefits or advantages. I'm going to list them very briefly and then maybe ask Henry to explain in a bit more detail. So first of all, these are all generalizations, but they're things we're finding as we're working with these innovation companies. The first is that they tend to be operating in sectors where it is all about building trusted relationships with customers. So the whole ethos and principle behind their business is consistent with the principle of GDPR. Secondly, if you have to build processes that comply with GDPR around having the right consent, knowing what data you have, where it's come from, how are you processing it, who do you give it to, young innovator companies may say it's much easier for them to do it from an early stage start, as opposed to companies that have been around for 20 or so years since the last new data regulation. They have got, literally acres and acres of silted data with consents that they either don't know whether they've got them or not and where they come from. So perhaps just generally being an innovator means that you have a more efficient process around it. And finally, for Henry to talk to as well, that maybe innovators are just from a cultural perspective more agile and able to respond. Henry, I don't know if you want to pick up on some of these.
So, just in the context of Babylon, just picking up on each of these, I think the first one's trusted data relationships, and we're dealing with a sector of healthcare. And I think that's one batch of data which everyone cares about. There may be some debate about whether people mind if their political views are made public, but I think most people would care if their health data was. So really, we were operating already in a sector where privacy and trust was at the center. So GDPR didn't really change much in that way. It just really, focused minds in how to implement it in a different way. On the second one about data efficiency, Babylon's only been going for around 4 years. So generally, you knew where the data was coming from. And in most cases, that was directly from the end user. So that really simplified things when doing the data mapping and working out what we had and how long we had it for. And then finally, for cultural agility, as a tech company, we're very used to running in sprints. So things will be mapped out 2 weeks later, they'll be built over a 2-week period, and then they'll be implemented. So that mindset has really helped with GDPR, especially when making tech changes, because things which may take many, many months in a big corporate could literally be implemented within a few weeks.
And so I think we just thought we'd have a look at 2 or 3 examples of companies that we either work for or work with to talk about how, in putting this principle in practice, that although GDPR does raise, challenges for all people processing significant amounts of data, that perhaps the innovators, the agile innovators, are able to respond more quickly to that compliance challenge. And so again, Henry, I don't know if you want to just, we put a screenshot or 3 screenshots of the Babylon service up. Hopefully everyone in the room will leave here and subscribe and become a customer of yours. But I don't know if you want to just explain a little bit in practice about how you've risen to some of the GDPR challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just to give you an idea very briefly, on the far left of the screen, that's the AI chatbot. So you can interact with the chatbot, put health symptoms in, and it will crunch and provide you information on the most likely possible matches of conditions. So, and last week there was a test carried out which showed some accuracy levels around on par with a doctor. The one in the middle is a digital consultation being carried out through your phone. So that's with a doctor, and obviously there's a certain amount of data collected there. And the third one, which is coming soon, as it says there, is health check, where you can essentially put information in about you and it will run a digital health report. Just in terms of a few practical examples, I think one that we're kind of grappling with at the moment is subject access requests. And I think one thing to think about there is it's all very well having these rights in theory and having a framework to deal with it, but implementing them in practice, unless they're automated, can be really, really time consuming. So we've had one this week which took 7 hours just to pull together one person's data because they've been interacting with the service so much. So I think really what we're doing at the moment is trying to say, okay, this isn't going to be scalable. What do we do to automate that process? So I think we're all for automation, and as a tech company, we'll now add that to the list and hopefully implement that fairly quickly. The other thing we're finding is we've always been really sensitive about data, and what GDPR's helped with is enabling us to get our subcontractors to sign up to the same standards. So we've actually seen that as a really good thing, because gone are the days where people say we can't sign up to that. They're now under legal obligations too. So I think that's an example, one example of where there's still work to be done and things that can be challenging, and one example where GDPR has really helped create a level playing field.